Welcome back. Analysts say they see a bleak festive season for consumers despite the latest retail figures showing sales have grown. Retail sales picked up by just over 2% in August, a slowdown from 2.4% expansion in July. But this is hardly enough to boost the struggling sector. The long-term outlook remains poor. It doesn't bode well for economic growth in the country, given that consumer spending contributes 65% of GDP. Household budgets are taking strain and consumers are hanging on to their purses. Banks have cut down lending in the unsecured market, and the current upward cycle in interest rates is also putting pressure on sales. Retail analyst Chris Gilmore sees little cheer this Christmas.
Looking at Christmas sales specifically, I think the chances are with the weak rand, that's also going to dampen the outlook because we're going to be seeing higher prices as well. So I can't see any factors out there that make me optimistic that we're going to see a good Christmas spending season.
Well, despite constrained growth in retail sales, the main contributors to retail sales continue to be general dealers and retailers in textiles, clothing, footwear and leather goods. And we've noticed that even though growth in retail sales has been trending down in recent months, we as South Africans are still buying clothes. So what clothes are we buying and why? Well, to discuss, we're joined by EL's publishing editor, Giselle Wertheim-Ames. Thank you very much for joining us, Giselle.
It's a pleasure.
Right.
It's a pleasure.
Now, the fact is clothes are still selling. Do you get the sense from your advertisers for EL magazine?
Yes, absolutely. I think, it was interesting listening to Chris because it sounds pretty bleak. But I think given that the South African consumer is extremely aspirational, we're very exposed to a global world through all the media now, whether it's TV, radio, and of course the internet. And I think that one can't underestimate that the consumer, there's a huge hunger out there. And clothing and the way that you express yourself is a very visible thing in an individual. In fact, a person could be relatively poor in terms of their assets, a house, or not having a house or a car. But if they look good, they would pitch much higher. So I think we can never underestimate the importance of that.
Now, in terms of the consumer, we know that the consumer is under a lot of strain. So these days, what is their driving force? Is it quality or price?
Mm-hmm. I think price, and I think you can see it in stores like, for example, Mr. Price. I mean, the name is very apt, where you're getting reasonable quality, I would say pretty good quality, but you're getting a really good price. And then there are other chains that are coming into the market. We're seeing stores like Cotton On, Topshop coming into the South African market. So they're bringing clothing and making it more accessible, a more quality, international kind of brand, which has that aspirational factor coming into the market, and I think that's where you're seeing consumers. And if you look at all the big major shopping centre developments, look at the Keystone stores, we're seeing that they are international brands. Forever Young coming to Cape Town, massive American brand. 4 or 5 story blocks in New York, for example, up of clothes. So the fact that they're coming into South Africa tells you that they're very bullish about what's happening here in this country.
But here and now, as people internationally look at the South African economy, obviously they don't just look at it in the short term, they'll look at it in the long term as well. Do we still look attractive to come and invest in from a retail perspective?
Absolutely, and I think we have a young population that's growing, that's becoming more economically active. You put all the pluses together, aspirational, young, needs to look good, wants to get ahead in life, all those things, and it's all just part of growing economy. I was looking at some of the figures in other countries in the growth, and it's really interesting because the BRICS, apart from Brazil, we're all growing very nicely above the average of developed markets in terms of retail fashion sales. So that tells you something about Africa and its potential.
Now, in terms of our emerging sort of talent in South Africa, we know that you assist those types of people. Do we have lots of David Tlalles waiting in the wings?
Not enough. So I think that where we're really failing as a country, because I think that there is, obviously the government changed some of the laws around imports and allowed countries to come in with much cheaper goods into the country so you can source much cheaper outside of South Africa. It kind of killed the local manufacturing industry. So we have a little bit of a disjunct. We also don't have enough support around young designers and enabling them, even if they can't manufacture in South Africa, which I think is first prize to create jobs. The second would be to enable them to be able to source and fund their designs and get more mainstream. We should really be seeing more of that, and we're not. And I think the government really needs to look at that.
Righty-ho. And in terms of the upper market, it seems as though globally, and I would assume here in South Africa, your upper end consumer has really not been much affected by economic adversity. So how do your labels like your Louis Vuittons and your Gucci, how have they been faring? Do they remain resilient?
Absolutely, and I think you were talking earlier on with your previous guest about the billionaires and how they're growing. So, and of course, I think the market for South Africa, what we forget is we have a lot of African shoppers. So we have very wealthy people from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Ghana coming to shop in South Africa. So there's been that growth. So a lot of the shops that we're talking about, like the Vuittons and the top brands like Yves Saint Laurent and Dior, coming into South Africa and are coming into very small bespoke kind of shops where you can find them, like Luminance, for example, and there are a couple of others. You'll find them there. They're very, very resilient. But that's the kind of income level that I think the average South African is not in that range at all.
No, we can't touch that at all. Thank you so much for your time. That was Giselle Wertheim Ames from Elle.